Gavin Newsom, a while back, made big news when he was appointing this group to study the issue of reparations to the descendants of African slaves. He was very proud to come out with this announcement that he was forming this committee, this group, to study the issue and come to a determination about whether or not reparations are owed, and if so, how much is the bill per person. So let's hear him first touting the formation of this study group.
In the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd and numerous others at the hands of police, millions took to the streets. You know this well.
Sorry, in case I wasn't clear about this. So this was in 2021.
Yeah.
So here we go.
This country and here in California, calling for an end to the violence. And as they continue to speak out to demand justice and equality, I heard those voices, and I had the privilege to travel all across the state to listen to our youth, our young folks, faith leaders, and community leaders. And I'm grateful for what they shared with me and for their passion and, more importantly, a sense of real urgency. That's why I was honored to sign in September of last year Assembly Bill 3121, which established this task force to study reparations for slavery. And with this bill, we're bringing together some of the best, the brightest minds to chart a path forward to move to a more equal California.
Equal California. Task Force, that's what it was. I always forget what the bullshit name they call these things. Task Force, not study group, committee. Task Force. A reparations task force. Okay, so they came out with their findings, and yeah, the bill was pretty high. They're talking about like $1.2 million per person who is the descendant of African slaves. It's a pretty high number. People who know this issue very, very well, Marcel Dixon, friend of the show, really, articulates the case for reparations in a very, very powerful way. He's the guy who kind of went semi-viral when he had that confrontation with Marianne Williamson at the South Carolina town hall, where he said, yeah, the number is really about $70 trillion. All right, now I have no reason to doubt his number there. He knows the issue far, far more than I do. Let's say it's $10 trillion. Right? Let's say it's that low. Whether it's 10 trillion, 5 trillion, even a trillion, what ought to be pretty obvious from the party that would not even give you paid family leave when they had the power to do so is that they're not giving you reparations. They're not going to enact reparations. And here we go to, in this segment, Exhibit B. Headline, Newsom declines to publicly support reparations payment recommended by the California Task Force. He issues a quote here. Dealing with legacy is about much more than cash payments. Oh, no, it sounds like what you're saying is it's about much less than cash payments.
We don't want to do anything so crude and crass as to give them money.
Right, exactly.
That would cheapen the entire effort.
Well, that's kind of what he says here. Many of the recommendations put forward by the task force are critical action items we've already been hard at work addressing. Oh, so then what'd you need the task force for? Breaking down barriers to vote. Oh, so we're not going to give reparations. We're going to make it easier for them to vote for us anyway, even though we're not giving reparations. Bolstering resources to address hate. Oh. Enacting sweeping law enforcement and justice reforms to build trust and safety, strengthening economic mobility, all while investing billions to root out disparities and improve equity in housing, education, healthcare, and well beyond. What's amazing about this
you gotta do that in your Kyle voice.
All while investing billions to root out disparities and improve equity in housing, education, healthcare, and well beyond. What's amazing about this is that he appoints this task force on reparations. They come out with the finding, which is like, yeah, we owe reparations and we owe a lot of reparations. He comes back with, well, what we owe is about more than just money. And then he goes on to list the exact Democrat Party platitudes that he would have recited before the reparations task force. Like, he comes out with the exact line of crap that he and Democrats like him have been parroting for decades. as if it's going to be lost on people that, wait a minute, if you were just going to come out and say this anyway, we have to address hate and counter hate and invest in a more equitable future and economic opportunity. And what was the other thing here? Breaking down barriers to vote. Like, if you were just going to come out and say that anyway, how ridiculous was it to appoint this task force in the first place? I mean, it's really amazing that you would touch an issue like this, which you know is a controversial issue, you know is a very emotionally charged issue for very, very good reason. And then you would come out and you would try to sell people on this same line of bullshit as if this issue was never raised. Like, he's just ignoring the fact that this issue was raised by people who really care about this, as they should. And the real reason why the Democrats will not give reparations, the real reason why you're never going to get reparations through regular order democracy, is because it's not even just about the money. Let's say it's 70 trillion. Let's say it's 50 trillion. Let's say it's 10 trillion. Once the political system admits that it owes the descendants of African slaves trillions of dollars, it admits that the whole economy that they have been touting for the last, do a mental math, 240 something years has been a complete fugazi, has been a complete sham. What you're saying at that point is we basically built this country on a credit card that we refuse to pay off, right? It's like going on vacation at a 5-star hotel and just putting it on a charge card and never paying it off. Well, you acted like you were rich and high on the hog, but you're not. You just did that with fake money that you're never going to actually pay back. That's what this economy is. That's what we admit this economy is once we admit that, yeah, we owe the people who built it $50 trillion, $70 trillion that we're not going to pay them. And they can't admit that. No political party will ever admit that.
No matter how you feel about reparations, whether you agree with it, don't agree with it, have theories about how it should be done, want a form of it, not cash payments, they're not doing any of it. And the Democratic Party specifically uses it the way that they use identity politics and their cute buzzwords like intersectionality, and they use it just to manipulate your vote without ever actually doing anything. And it also allows them to present themselves to their PMC base like they're way out to the radical left on the side of justice, which allows them to feel good about themselves for supporting the party. Otherwise, it would just be too transparently the gay or Republican Party, right? They have to take up some things like this. But they're never going to do them. But they will allow discussion of this kind of thing because it's so legislatively impossible. Like, it would never get to a point beyond this, beyond a study group. So they don't mind stirring up talk of this. They don't like talk about Medicare for all. They don't like talk about free college because that's much more doable. That has a lot less obstacles in front of it, and you have a much broader base of support for it. So they'll talk about reparations all day, even going so far as to set up a study committee. But any time that it comes up, this is how it's going to end, with platitudes, with excuses. They're never actually going to do that for you. It's a shell game like everything else with the Democrats.
Right, exactly. But the fact that Gavin Newsom can go out there after the task force recommends cash reparations to the descendants of African slaves, the fact that he can go up there after this task force has, given him their findings and come back with breaking down barriers to vote, bolstering resources to address hate, and enacting justice reforms to build trust and safety, that just shows what utter contempt these politicians have for their own voters. Because how you can feel that's acceptable to just go out there and give them literally the same thing their politicians have been telling them for 40 years about this issue that you know for good reason is extremely emotionally charged and extremely important to the people who brought it to the table in the first place.
They don't give a shit.
That you would go up there and just throw out the slop, Yeah, just grab the like house vodka from under the bar and just pour a huge club and say, "Here, drink this." We're not even gonna give you the mid-shelf shit. We're just gonna give you the swill. That's what we think of you. Reparations? No, we're gonna break down barriers. Don't like it? Go fuck yourself. Who are you gonna vote for? Donald Trump? That's what they think of their voters. And here's the real red pill, folks. They're right to feel that way because their voters do not hold them accountable for treating them that way. Why would Gavin Newsom feel any differently about his voters? What reason does he have to respect them? None, because they don't hold him account no matter what, ever.
All right. And I'm also, as a little bit of a preview to our
Tuesday's interview,
I'm going to read a little bit from Norm for any of you who might have forgotten why the Democrats love having the issue of reparations out there to use as a cudgel that they'll never actually be called to account on. Sanders advocated universal programs that would benefit all the have-nots. It was in the nature of things, however, that African Americans would be the prime beneficiaries of Bernie's platform as they were least able to afford health insurance and higher education and most in need of jobs. What we should be talking about is making massive investments in rebuilding our cities and creating millions of decent paying jobs and making public colleges and universities tuition free. Basically targeting our federal resources to the areas where it is needed the most. And where it is needed the most is in impoverished communities, often African American and Latino. Still, the woke crowd hounded Bernie with the question, do you support black reparations? As if answering no proved he was a racist. If he did reply in the negative, it was because answering yes would have estranged his potential supporters in the white working class. If woke Democratic Party hacks could afford to answer yes, it was because they had already written off a wide swath of white workers. It was a lose-lose proposition for Sanders. If he came out in favor of reparations, it would drastically shrink the coalition he hoped to build. If he came out against them, he would stand accused of a blind spot on race. Blind spot was the chimera of black reparations touted by Democratic Party con artists who knew full well that a substantive reparations bill was dead on arrival, really to be preferred over the prospect of free healthcare, free higher education, and a living wage job. It might be contended that neither program was a realistic possibility, but it's not an accident that the Democratic Party woke elite, hell-bent against wealth redistribution, entertained Coates' proposal, they're talking about Ta-Nehisi Coates, while denouncing Sanders' platform. So, we'll be speaking more about that with our guest on Tuesday, but that's why they keep dangling reparations out there. It's a great weapon for them to use against anyone who wants to talk about class or universal health care, things that you're going to need a broad base of support to execute. You bring up this very divisive issue that the African American community feels very strongly about, use it to disqualify anyone who makes these kinds of proposals, and then put together a bullshit study committee to pretend you actually give a crap about it, something you're never actually gonna have to do.
Please clap.